There's no doubt in anyone's mind that the race to space is back on once again. But it's about more than just putting things up into the atmosphere or the lower levels of space. You hear that, Jeff Bezos? It's about going and pushing the space industry to places it's never been able to go before. Continuous launches, reusable vessels, and of course, going back to the moon. And finally, reaching Mars with a human. SpaceX has been driving the force behind this rebirth, and they're getting ever closer to completing their dream. Allow us to show you SpaceX Super Heavy What You Don't Know. What is the Super Heavy? SpaceX Starship spacecraft and Super Heavy rocket, collectively referred to as Starship, represent a fully reusable transportation system designed to carry both crew and cargo to Earth orbit, the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Starship will be the world's most powerful launch vehicle ever developed, with the ability to carry in excess of 100 metric tons to Earth orbit. Starship is designed to deliver satellites further and at a lower marginal cost per launch than our current Falcon vehicles. With a payload compartment larger than any fairing currently in operation or development, Starship creates possibilities for new missions, including space telescopes even larger than the James Webb. Starship will enter Mars' atmosphere at 7.5 kilometers per second and decelerate aerodynamically. The vehicle's heat shield is designed to withstand multiple entries, but given that the vehicle is coming into the Mars' atmosphere so hot, we still expect to see some ablation of the heat shield similar to wear and tear on a brake pad. So as you can see, SpaceX is going very big with the Super Heavy rocket/Starship, as they want to make sure that this is everything it needs to be to get us to Mars and then some. And the best part is, they've been testing it out for a while. The May mission. On May 5th, Starship serial number 15, SN15, successfully completed SpaceX's 5th high-altitude flight test of a Starship prototype from Starbase in Texas. Similar to previous high-altitude flight tests of Starship, SN15 was powered through ascent by 3 Raptor engines, each shutting down in sequence prior to the vehicle reaching apogee, approximately 10 kilometers in altitude. SN15 performed a propellant transition to the internal header tanks, which hold landing propellant, before reorienting itself for re-entry and a controlled aerodynamic descent. The Starship prototype descended under active aerodynamic control, accomplished by independent movement of 2 forward and 2 aft flaps on the vehicle. All 4 flaps were actuated by an onboard flight computer to control Starship's altitude during flight and enabled precise landing at the intended location. SN15's Raptor engines reignited as the vehicle performed the landing flip maneuver immediately before touching down for a nominal landing on the pad. These test flights of Starship are all about improving the understanding and development of a fully reusable transportation system designed to carry both crew and cargo on long-duration interplanetary flights, and help humanity return to the Moon and travel to Mars and beyond. And with each successful test, they're pushing and improving the superhighway so that it can go and do more, which is being showcased in the recent developments with it. Recent tests. Amid a flurry of deliveries and work on several new Starship boosters, SpaceX is preparing the first truly finished Super Heavy for its next steps. Partially completed by early September, Super Heavy Booster 4, B4, supported SpaceX's iconic full-stack fit test back on August 6th before returning to the build site, but has mostly just floated around Starbase's launch and test facilities in the 7 weeks since its second trip to the pad. On September 10th, CEO Elon Musk himself suggested that SpaceX had plans to static fire the booster as early as mid-September, more than 6 weeks ago. Obviously, nothing even approximating Super Heavy testing transpired. Instead, at least relative to rapid-fire Starbase operations in the 2 years prior, SpaceX has almost absent-mindedly worked on the booster, mostly completing partially finished wire runs that runs its full 69 meters or 225 feet length. In the last few weeks, though, the type of work being done on Super Heavy B4 has changed. On September 26th, to give the Starbase construction crew more room to install giant arms on the orbital pad's launch tower, SpaceX removed Super Heavy B4 from the launch mount for the second time, temporarily relocating it to an unused pad of the pad's old landing zone. Booster 4 hasn't been moved since. However, while probably a bit slower than SpaceX would have liked, large-scale work on the Starship launch tower was effectively completed last week with the installation of 2 giant rocket-catching Mechazilla arms. A great deal of work has also been done on Starbase's orbital tank farm over the last 2 months, including the installation of the last few storage tanks, the sleeving of those tanks, a great deal of plumbing, and the start of real propellant deliveries. Save for a few days spent testing Starship S-20 in late September and mid-October, the pad construction crews that have to evacuate the pad for 6 to 12 hours for every test have had 3 full months to work without interruption. Perhaps the most optimistic explanation for the unusually long gap between Booster 4 and Ship 20 rollout and testing is that SpaceX consciously chose to put off vehicle tests to avoid disrupting orbital launch site construction and retasked nearly all Starbase workers for that construction. Improvements? Regardless, with the launch tower and orbital tank farm now more or less structurally complete, and work already underway to prepare the tank farm to support its first booster tests, most of the work that may have been drawing focus and resources away from ship and booster preparations appears to be wrapping up. That may be why, for the 3rd time, SpaceX technicians began removing a number of Raptor engines from Super Heavy B4 around the start of October. Aside from removing around 1/3 to half of Super Heavy's 29 Raptors, SpaceX also began slowly but surely installing parts of a steel heat shield designed to protect those engines during ground testing, ascent, and re-entry. Newer Raptors have also been trickling from Starbase's build site to the launch pad for installation on the booster, and more engines will likely be reinstalled as heat shield installation progresses. Perhaps the most unusual part of the recent Super Heavy B4 work is the apparent application of some kind of foam around several racks of pressure vessels, COPVs, hydraulic manifolds, and umbilical connections installed around the booster's base. Those racks will eventually be enclosed inside steel aero covers, already staged beside Super Heavy. A number of Twitter users believe that the foam being selectively applied is for acoustic deadening, meant to protect sensitive electronics, valves, and computers from the brutal environment Super Heavy itself will produce at liftoff and during ground testing. Ultimately, with Booster 4 work ramping back up and the zenith of orbital pad construction activity now likely behind SpaceX, preparations for major Super Heavy testing will hopefully resume. SpaceX has yet to perform a full Super Heavy wet dress rehearsal, WDR, fully filling a rocket's tanks and performing a launch countdown, or fire up more than 3 Raptors on a booster or ship prototype. With any luck, that will finally change in the final months of 2021. Progression. While it's hard to see given all that's being done, it's clear that SpaceX is doing all that it can to go and deliver everything it needs to make sure that the Super Heavy, its boosters, and the Starship are ready for the launches they want to use it for. Part of the reason that SpaceX is doing so well right now is that they make everything in-house, and as a result, they are able to do many launches in a year and fix things when it all goes wrong. And it goes wrong a lot, sadly. But with each iteration, with each progression, they're getting better. They're getting more advanced, and they're fixing all the problems that go and pop up. Soon, hopefully very soon, we'll be able to see multiple launches with the Super Heavy and getting a feeling for how long SpaceX will be until its next big missions. We're still a ways off from Mars, but the moon is likely going to happen sooner rather than later. And that'll be the ultimate test for the Starship and Super Heavy. Thus, while they're trying to make sure everything is good before they even think of putting people in it. So what do you think? What do you think of this look at the Super Heavy rocket and its spaceship attachment that SpaceX are developing? Do you think that this will indeed be the vehicle by which we not only get back into space on the regular, but we reach the moon again and Mars with? Will Elon Musk be the reason that we are finally able to colonize space? Or are there more hurdles to come? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time on the channel.